Hey there, I'm just going to review a few videos of Rue during his board and train. And I'll explain this more in an email, but I had some technical trouble with my camera, which means that now all the videos are kind of out of order. So they're going to be more of a hodgepodge of kind of video connections, but I've tried getting them in order as best I can, but there'll be some where he seems to be a little bit more advanced in one than the other, and that's why. So here we are working on his downs. I've started doing the downs first because they were a real challenge for him. And so I wanted to practice the downs while he was fresh. So here I have, I started off just doing that hand signal of my pointer finger pointed to the ground. And since he was doing pretty well with that at a standing position, I'm going to start introducing a verbal down. And so that looks like me saying the word down and then pairing it with the hand signal. After a number of repetitions pairing the two, I'm going to see if he can just get it off of a verbal. So I'm going to say down, give him 3 to 5 seconds to kind of process. And if he's still having trouble, then I'm going to go back to the hand signal. And after a number of repetitions, he was still having trouble making that association and kind of making the jump to just using the verbal. So we're going to take a little bit of a break, do some hand touches and some recall since he enjoys those so much and they really help to boost his confidence. So I'm going to do some just quick repetitions of that and then see if we can't go back to some downs and see if he can make the jump to a verbal down. But this has definitely been a challenge for him throughout, being able to do a down on a verbal cue. And we're just going to keep pairing it until he's able to kind of make that jump and just do the down on a verbal cue. You may notice I also have a senior dog in the background there, just kind of providing a distraction. That can always be handy when working. And usually when we talk about increasing distractions, we'll often go to a different place, but we can also add distractions to the existing environment, and that can be a great way of just kind of gradually making the distractions harder, especially since he has trouble being outside because of cars. It's been making generalizing the behaviors to other places kind of hard. So adding in the distraction of another dog can be a great way of bringing in some distractions. So we're going to start working on his stays. We've been doing a lot of sit stays because he's been having trouble with his downs, but both are going to be kind of following the same process. So I'm going to ask for either a sit or a down. Then I'm going to say stay. Then I'm going to gradually increase duration, distance, and distractions. Whenever one criteria goes up, the others go down. And then when I'm done, I'm going to say free and give him a little beckoning motion and toss out a treat. In this way, he's learning that stay means to maintain that position and free means that he can move. Now, especially with the sits, I don't want him to have to stay in that position for too long, just because it can be kind of hard for our puppies who aren't completely developed and don't have that core strength yet. It can be hard for them to maintain that sit, which is why I usually prefer to do down stays. And so you'll see us start to put those in. It's just that if he makes a mistake and gets up, I'm going to reset him, and right now his down isn't quite good enough for a reset. So we're going to work on a EVIT here, and this is actually a later session of a EVIT. I will eventually find the first session of EVIT. So at this point, I'm starting to generalize the EVIT to different objects. So I'm dropping an object saying EVIT, and as soon as he looks back at me, I can mark and treat. So the EVIT actually means look at me, and that's when I'm going to mark and treat. If he goes towards the object, I'm just going to step on it so that he's not able to get it and wait for him to check back in with me for that mark and treat. We're then going to do a little bit of place. So I'm going to start by just repeating, by just practicing going to place. So I'm going to start from different places myself, either facing the bed or facing the side of the bed, and then I'm going to prompt him to place. Once he does so, I'm going to mark and treat, and then I'm going to say free so that he can move off and we can practice again. And then I'm going to go ahead and put on the relaxation protocol recording so that I can start going through the different steps and gradually build the duration, distance, and distractions while he's on it. So he's doing a really nice job with this. This is definitely one of our higher level points where I'm going to be going towards the door and opening the door. And so because of that, you're also going to see him make a couple of mistakes. And when that happens, I'm just going to say whoops and prompt him back on. And that just means that we're not going to be able to progress to the next day because he's still struggling with this day and needing to work on it more. And that's completely fine. This is a really hard level just because of the number of distractions with it. So we can just kind of continue to take it slow and practice at his pace. So here we're moving into more of one of our passive relaxation sessions where I'm basically going to be reinforcing any movement or progression towards relaxation. So I have my senior dog here as well to kind of imitate and show him what it is that I'm wanting him to do. And I'm just going to be chopping up some treats, preparing some food. I really like to practice this in the kitchen at the counter since that's usually where our dogs have trouble with counter surfing. So this way I'm able to kind of passively work on that counter surfing by just encouraging any other behavior that's not counter surfing. And I'm particularly looking towards this nice relaxed behavior as well. So as he starts to settle and sit and lay down, I'm going to be reinforcing that with some drops of food on the ground. So you can see now he's doing a really nice job, and it didn't take him long at all to get into this position and start to kind of relax, which is really nice. This is something that we've been working on, and I think I had a video of it before during our first session. And during that first session I cut out a lot because it was taking him a while to settle, and now this is just kind of real time of me fixing up some food, and he's just settling nicely on the floor. And so I'm just going to go ahead and occasionally drop some treats for him. And this is just a great way of remembering to reinforce the behaviors that we want. And since we typically want nice, calm behavior, that's what I want to reinforce. And it's also a great way to work on encouraging behaviors that's not counter surfing. So I am going to cut out some here just for the sake of time. But know that he's mostly just going to be hanging out, getting treats for having nice, calm, relaxed behavior. I wanted to come back and re-highlight this point. So we've been practicing, and he's just been kind of hanging out, occasionally adjusting his positioning, but mostly just staying there. And I'm actually going to be moving some food around in the oven. He does get up to kind of come investigate, which is okay. You can see he maintained that down for a while. And then even when he comes to investigate, he's not being pushy or begging or trying to get to the counter. He almost just ends up being more interested in my dog. And I'm going to just see if he can go back to settling on his own. And not only is he able to go back and settle on his own, but he actually ends up going back to pretty much the same spot he was before to settle, which is really nice because not only is he able to settle, he's able to self-entertain with that toy that he just picked up, which is wonderful, but he's also content with settling at that same space. So he's able to, he doesn't feel the need to be right under me or too close to me. He can just hang out in his own space and kind of self-entertain with that little toy to chew on. So that's really great to see. As I start moving around some more, he does start moving around more. But really, this is great practice for getting up, getting a little bit distracted and jazzed up, and then going back to settling. I cut out another few minutes, but I just want to highlight again kind of me moving around more, getting a bit more animated, and how he definitely is attentive to that. But how his reaction is kind of just to go back to self-entertaining with the toy. He might reposition himself, get up for a moment to be distracted, and then comes back. So now we're going to be having a session outside, and I'm going to be doing just some kind of passive socialization here. So I'm just seeing, can you check in with me? Can you do a hand touch? Can you do a recall, some eye contact? Just some very basic high reinforced behaviors while we're outside and there's a lot of distractions. And I'm mostly waiting for a car to come by. So I am going to put my foot on his leash just so I'm directing that energy downward. And so that I can have a bit more control if a car comes by. And then I want to reinforce him for checking out the cars. So you'll see, especially here, there's some cars out in the distance at that corner. So I'm going to be marking and treating as he's able to check in with me. And then after a car goes by the corner, I want to take a moment to do some pattern games, just tossing that treat back and forth in a pendulum motion, so that he can recover a bit from that car going by at a distance. And this, when the cars are at the corner, that's really the perfect distance to practice. So it's about 2 houses down. That's how I'm going to measure that distance. Any closer and it's a bit too hard for him, but at 2 houses down, he's able to kind of do that engage, disengage and be pretty successful at it. He also can then have a pretty nice recovery, and we can then go back to doing some hand touches and recall and eye contact just to make sure that he's recovered well. So now you can see he's kind of doing that engage, disengage with a car that's at the corner. And you know that because I've put my foot on his leash to help bring his force of gravity down. And then every time he looks over, I'm going to mark. And when he looks back at me, I will give him a treat. And we're just going to repeat that until the car passes. And then we're going to work towards his recovery with that pendulum pattern game until he has a bit more focus and I can go back to asking for a hand touch or eye contact. So this session outside starts off really nicely, just because of where the cars are going. We have a great setup right here. And this can be a great thing to practice with him, just since he is kind of reactionary towards sounds and things that are going around him. It can be helpful to just sit outside and reinforce him for looking around and then checking back in with you. Right there, a car went by and it was harder for him. Thankfully I was prepared, so my foot was on the leash, his center of gravity was down, and I was able to try to treat him. But the car was so close and fast and noisy because it was trailing a trailer that he wasn't even really able to take treats. So in that moment, you have the option of trying to get some more space, turning around and getting some more space, or in this case, we were just kind of going to buckle down and see if we could get through it. And then as soon as he's able to take treats, I'm there to do that engage, disengage. So here, the people across the street are going to be getting in and out of their truck. They're not even going anywhere. They're just kind of preparing. But this is a lot of what our dogs figure out is a pattern and a precursor to the car getting started. Is first we're going to unlock it, and then we're going to be opening the doors to go in. So these are all kind of precursors to the car potentially moving, and it's definitely getting on his radar. And so I'm able to start the engage disengage with just those cars opening and shutting and the truck itself doing like a beep beep as it gets unlocked. So this can be just as important to practice as the actual cars moving, just because he's already distracted and put off by just the truck noises and kind of the precursors to the car going. So I'm going to do the engage disengage with that just as I would with a moving car. And then a truck did drive by, which made it kind of difficult, and also just kind of solidified to him that, yep, that's a precursor to a car driving by, is when people are getting in and out of a car. So I'm going to see if I can get him back while this truck backs out. So you see I'm able to have that low center of gravity. I'm basically just treating him the whole time that the car is driving by. And then as it starts to save, I'm going to see if I can treat him with that engage, disengage. And then once the car is gone and we have a moment of peace, I want to see if I can't get him to recover a little bit and come back a little bit from all those distractions by doing some pattern games, either the pendulum one or the up-down one, just so we can get him engaged a bit more. And then I'll usually test his engagement by asking for a hand touch. And here that was a bit too hard for him. So we're then going to head on over to my patio. And so there are a row of bushes in front of my patio, which works as a nice visual barrier, but you still get a pretty good look at the street. Just it's a little bit more hidden. And what I'm mostly wanting to do though is work on that passive real relaxation out here. The reason being that I want to kind of emulate and encourage some relaxation so that then when a car goes by, he's already in a bit of a more relaxed state and can hopefully return to that relaxed state faster than he would if he was already kind of up and about. So relaxation is another important part of recovery, and I'm hoping to practice that here. So I'm going to start by kind of prompting him into a down. I'll then drop some treats on the ground for him. If he gets up, that's fine. I'm going to wait for him to, I'm going to prompt him down again. I'll usually prompt the down 3 times, and then I want to see if he's able to get into that down on his own. And then I'll just continue to reinforce any proximity towards relaxation. And that's particularly when there's nothing else going on. Now, if I notice a car is about to pass by, or even if I hear a car, I'm going to go back to that engage, disengage, and refocus on that over relaxation. Though my hope is that he'll stay in a nice relaxed down while the cars go by. And that definitely happens a few times in the beginning here. There's cars that are kind of going by. And for one thing, not that he doesn't know that they're there, but they don't seem to have as long of a presence because they disappear behind the bushes. So that creates a nice visual barrier for him. So it just lessens the amount of times that they're on his radar. They were also cars, so they weren't making quite as much noise as like a truck or a trailer would. And so with this visual barrier, in addition to engage, disengage, I'm kind of doing an open bar, close bar thing as well, which is basically whenever the triggering thing appears, which in this case is going to be the cars, the bar opens, which means that treats rain from the sky. And then when it disappears, the treats stop, at least momentarily. So this way he starts to associate cars with treats being dropped on the ground. And this works out well here because there's just a limited line of sight when the cars go by versus in the driveway when we kind of have to see them drive off into the distance. This is definitely going to be more of an exact, the car appears, the car disappears between the bushes. And then in between, we're just getting to practice some nice relaxation. This is a great step towards being a patio dog and being able to hang out on the patio with us, as if he can just hang out and relax at a little table on a patio. So I am going to be reinforcing any relaxation, but I'm hoping to get to work on some cars just as they pass by as well. So you can see now we've been relaxing for a little bit. And he's getting a bit better about relaxing. Every so often he'll look out, probably to a car or a person. And then I'll either mark so that he checks back in with me, or if it's a side or distraction, I'll wait to see if he can check in with me. Right here, you probably notice a bigger energy coming from him. A car was passing by. And so I'm going to try to encourage him to settle while the car is passing by, looking back at me when through that engage, disengage. And so you can see it's a little bit harder, but because it was a car going by, but what's impressive is that he was settling beforehand, and now that we're already kind of set that up as equilibrium, you're going to see he gets into a nice settle again, much easier than he would if we were in the driveway. And so this is my hope with practicing relaxation while those cars are going by. It's just that even if he gets off of equilibrium, he's able to get back there a bit faster and easier. And yeah, so now you can see he's starting to settle on his own again. I'm encouraging it and kind of prompting it some just to kind of help him know what it is that I'm looking for. But my hope is that he's able to kind of get back into that position on his own. And now you can see he's kind of back to doing that, sort of just looking around. And then when he checks in with me, I can mark and treat. Or if I see any signs towards relaxation and settling, I can go ahead and reinforce that. So I'm going to let you watch this for a bit on double speed just so you can kind of watch how we're working towards that relaxation. And you can probably tell by his body language when a car is passing by and something's happening. And that way you can kind of watch how I'm doing that engage, disengage, and trying to get him back to focusing with me and settling and relaxing with me as well. So here's another moment of something coming by, and you can see he's very much honed in on it and doing his little stalking. But I am going to put that treat right up to his face so that I can get him to break that focus on the car that's going by. And that might even just mean dropping a treat in front of him or to the side a little bit so that he follows that treat to break that eye contact. So this video really should have been in earlier. It was an earlier day that we were working on this, and it just downloaded afterwards with all my technical issues. But I know it's a bit earlier in our process because here I'm still doing that hand signal for the down. So I'm starting to raise that hand signal just to see if I can't get it a bit higher. But I'm not even really trying to do a verbal down at this point. I'm just trying to get him responding, ready towards that hand signal. I really want a high success of that response to the hand signal before I start to add in the verbal. So then we're going to work on, it looks like this was my first time trying to bring in a verbal down. So I've been pairing the verbal down and the hand signal, and now I'm just trying to see if he can just respond to that verbal. And if he's having some trouble, I'm going to go back to the hand signal. And you can see he's doing a good job of responding to that hand signal. We definitely don't get the verbal down in this one session. It's a bit too hard for him. And I even, since not knowing the verbal kind of, I think, discouraged him a little bit, I'm actually going to have to place my hand signal I'm going to have to lower it again. And so this is when I start to learn that he does get discouraged very easy. And so it can help to kind of encourage him in between harder sessions it can kind of reinforce his drive to work and keep trying by adding in something that he knows well. So since the verbal was a bit too hard for him, I had to go back to an even lower hand signal so that I could encourage him to continue to try and remind him that he does know what he's doing, that we're just advancing it a little bit. What I really like is that when I went to go walk away, he's still nicely settled. So he's gotten really good at just kind of passively settling if he's not sure what else to do, which is always great. And now that I've kind of tried to encourage him by going back to a lower hand signal, I'm going to see if we can't start to raise it again and just continue to try working on that down until we can work our way up to a nice verbal down. So we're going to be switching gears here, but I just really love that when we're switching gears and I kind of have to step away, that he just continues to nicely settle. I almost have to prompt him back up because we're going to be working on our sit stays now. He is doing really well with this. You can see I'm starting to add a good bit of distance, and I'm even changing directions a bit. So I'm really mixing it up some. And he's doing a really nice job of just maintaining that sit. Now, just like with anything else, I don't want to be progressively getting harder because that's just going to burn him out and kind of discourage him from working if it's always getting harder. So that's why you'll see me kind of start with a hard one, and then I'm going to go back and just do a simple duration just to kind of keep him engaged and working. So this is going to be when I'm introducing that EVIT. So earlier we were kind of generalizing it to different objects, and this is me starting him on it. So to start an EVIT, I'm going to have this boring object. It's the lid of a peanut butter jar. I'm going to show it to him. He can explore it, sniff it, whatever. I'm not going to do anything until he looks away from it. And as soon as he looks away and looks towards me, that's when I'm going to mark and treat. And we're going to repeat that a number of times while it's just in my hand. And then I'm going to slowly start lowering it to the ground so that it appears to, so the ground, he looks back at me, I mark and treat. And then I'm going to pair it with the word EVIT so that it appears, I say EVIT, he looks at me, I mark and treat. And then I'm going to start dropping it on the ground. So we got pretty far in that first session with the EVIT, but it's definitely something that we're going to continue to work on to make sure he can generalize it and get better at it. So here we're going to be doing our first day of wait at the door. So this is kind of an implied stay, though I am going to be asking him to wait. I want him to wait at the door while I open it. My ultimate goal is that as I open the door, he waits. I have this bed here not as a place, but just because my floor is really slippery, and so a lot of times if the dog is sitting or laying down on my floor, they'll be sipping around, and that just hinders their ability to wait. So I instead have this bed that I'm gonna kind of prompt him onto, and then either prompt a sit or a down, and then I'm going to say wait. I'm going to make a motion towards the door, and then I'm going to mark and treat as long as he's able to maintain that wait. I'm going to do that a few times just as I move closer to the door, and then I'm going to give him a break by saying free, letting him walk around a little bit. We might do some hand touches as a way of just taking a break and giving him some bit of encouragement. And then we're going to go back to the wait. And so again, just like with the stays, I'm not always making this harder. Sometimes I'm just going to ask him to wait while I move my hand towards the door. And then other times I'm going to ask him to wait while I open the door. So I want him to wait until the door is completely open. And then I'm going to release him out with a free. Now, upon going out the door, I really want him to be able to come back and focus on me. So upon going out the door, I then am going to call him. So I'm just going to call his name, Rue, and see if he can come back and focus on me. That part is really hard for him. So I go ahead and just kind of encourage him to come back inside so that we can practice this again. This definitely takes some repetition, not just the waiting at the door, which he's already made some progress in, but also that then once he's outside that he checks back in with me. Now, if while I've asked him to wait, if he starts to get up, I'm just going to shut the door and or block him so that he's not able to go outside, and then I'm going to reset him, and then my next repetition is going to be easier. And then once we're outside, I want to be working on that focus because we're going to be working on, the cars going by, kind of that reactivity. This is kind of earlier in our sessions. So I already know that he has the reactivity, but we haven't gotten to the point of practicing relaxation with it. So I'm just trying to encourage any focus or attention to me. And then I'm also going to be encouraging movement away from the street so that we can practice kind of retreating and getting some space from the cars. So you'll see me occasionally tossing a treat back, and that's just to encourage him to move away from the street. And my hope is that also by looking down after a treat that I've thrown, that he will then look back up to check in with me. He's having a lot of trouble with his focus outside today. This was definitely one of our earlier sessions where we were still kind of working on that focus and attention. So you can see it's a bit harder for him. As long as there's nothing big going on, I'll just wait for him to check in with me. But if a person or a car or something's about to go past, I am going to try to encourage that attention to me. So my goal is to have it be more of a default for him. But if he's struggling, I want to go ahead and prompt what it is that I'm looking for, which at this point is just some eye contact and engagement. My hope is to eventually also start working on some walking out here, and you'll see us work on walking in some other videos. But since this is just kind of an earlier rendition, it's mostly just us working on the focus so that we're prepared when a car comes by. And then since it is hard, I do want to take him inside for a bit of recovery, and we're going to be playing a bit in here. So we're starting off with some pattern games for that recovery, and then I want to see if I can't do some two toy play. And you're going to see he actually does really well with his 2-toy play today. So while that, I'm going to start adding in a drop cue. And so again, this in no way means that he's going to drop everything or is ready to have a drop it on cue. I'm just starting to use this 2-toy play as a way of encouraging the drop it. So initially, I want to just develop this pattern. If he goes, he gets the toy, he comes back, he drops that toy so I can toss out the second one. But once I see that we have some good, consistent patterning of that behavior and he's ready dropping it when he starts to come back, that's when I'm going to add in the word drop. And so I just want to say it once, and then my goal is to have him drop the first toy for the second toy. So I always want to make sure I have a bit of a pattern built up first so that there's a high likelihood of him dropping the toy when he comes back. But if for some reason he was having some trouble with that and not dropping it quite as quickly, especially after I said drop, I would still only say drop once and then just continue to encourage him with the toys to drop that. So he's doing a pretty nice job with this. This was our first time kind of adding in that drop word. So we'll continue to work on that with toys. And then when I'm wanting to pick up the toys, I'm going to do a treat scatter so that he can sniff around, find all those treats. And then I'm going to pick up the toys while he's not noticing. And then I'm going to play that treat scatter with him.